Good Wednesday evening, everybody. Taylor Plott here, and we do have Major Hurricane Rafael that has made landfall across Cuba this afternoon. But what about the rest of the forecast? Let's get right to it. First off, let's take a look at the current radar. This is the Key West radar, and you see the center of Rafael has just now moved to the north of mainland Cuba. That is the eye wall that you see right here that is continuing to move to the northwest at a rather quick pace. It's moving off to the northwest at, I believe, 13 miles per hour. And this will continue to track its way on off to the northwest over the next several hours, and then will eventually move into parts of the central Gulf Coast as it takes a hard left turn. It's going to immediately move to the west here very, very soon. There's your latest forecast advisory, the 7 p.m. advisory. Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 105 miles per hour. The pressure is 966 millibars, and there's that movement to the northwest at about 13 miles per hour. But again, it will start to make a pretty hard left turn here very, very soon. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to stop the radar loop, and I'm going to put on the infrared and take off the NextRad data and back it out. So you take a look at what take a look at what Rafael looks like on the infrared satellite image. Still got that big area of white there, a little bit of pink in there as well. That's the very cold cloud tops. That's very robust thunderstorms that you see right around that eye wall that is now just to the northwest of Cuba. Key West seeing some of the impacts, some of those outer rain bands. Really not looking at like extremely breezy conditions over there in Key West, but there is definitely you're definitely seeing some impacts from Rafael. The latest advisory here gets the tropical storm force winds just getting close to that Key West and the Florida Keys over there. You do have a tropical storm warning in effect for all of the Florida Keys, and this will go for the next several hours until Rafael makes that hard left turn and will kick out into the central Gulf of Mexico. Now, one thing that we are watching is, of course, the forecast. So let's go over here to the forecast computer here. This is where the National Hurricane Center outlook, the forecast is right now. Again, here's the center of Rafael just to the north of Cuba. Hurricane warning still in effect for parts of Cuba, but notice how it will start to take that hard left turn to the west, and it will maintain hurricane strength over the next several days. It will still be a hurricane once you get into the weekend, most likely. But what happens over here in more of the western Gulf of Mexico, it's a little bit uncertain. That's why I see the cone really blow up there, is there's a lot of uncertainty going on with the forecast guidance. But we are confident that once it gets over here into the western Gulf of Mexico, a lot more dry air, a lot more wind shear will be impacting the system, and it should start to weaken. That's why you see these S's right here in that forecast. It's going to be dropping down to a tropical storm once you get into the end of the weekend and early next week. Here's that forecast guidance that we need to show you guys. So this is off of the NAM model. We'll show a couple of different models here. This is the 12-kilometer NAM. As you go into your day on Thursday, notice how it moves to that northwest, and then there he goes. It takes that hard left turn. And again, it will continue to be a hurricane right here in the late evenings on Thursday. That is a 990, I think that's what it is. It's a 990 millibar area low pressure. So that's still a Category 1 hurricane, most likely over here in the central Gulf of Mexico. But one thing I want you to notice, I'm going to back up here. Notice how right here you have a lot of the precipitation showing up here, those brighter colors on that east side of the system, but getting close to that circulation. Watch what happens once it moves to the west. Notice how it still kind of hugs that center of circulation, but all of a sudden you start seeing it being pushed off to the east. That's that wind shear that's going to be impacting it, and that drier air. So that's going to make it lose that inner core that it needs to stay strong. And once it gets out into the western Gulf of Mexico, notice how it quickly on Friday morning, you're still, if this verifies, at say 995 millibar, most likely either a weak Category 1 hurricane or a strong tropical storm. But once you get into the afternoon and evening, that gets down to 1,000 millibars, and everything's pushing off to the west, or to the east. So that's going to be a very weakening system as it continues to move off to the west, and it will eventually interact with this trough coming in here. There's going to be a cold front moving across parts of the southern U.S. over the weekend, and that's going to interact with this circulation over here in the western Gulf of Mexico. There was some uncertainty whether or not this would move up into parts of Louisiana and the southern U.S., which would have been amazing. That would have brought some very beneficial widespread rainfall to the south where there's a drought going on. They need it like desperately. But unfortunately, the European model, it was locked into this solution, even with a lot of the other models weren't, and it is kind of locked in now that this will likely move to the west and kind of sit here across the western Gulf of Mexico and then eventually get absorbed by that trough moving in. This is the GFS model. It's still a little bit to the north, but it still gives you that kind of same idea. This is Sunday, and then eventually it would move to the northeast, whatever is left of it, and it's possible it could still bring some beneficial rainfall to extreme southern Alabama and parts of the Gulf Coast. But that's the GFS's solution. This is the European solution, and again, it's been the most consistent. Let me back up to the 12Z. It's been the most consistent. The last model run still had a very strong, possibly major hurricane in the western Gulf of Mexico, and then it moved it onshore across parts of central Mexico. I don't quite buy that at the moment. This is the latest 18Z run. See how it went back to that kind of broad low. I think that's the most likely scenario we're looking at. I don't think the shear gets weak enough to where it can maintain that strength like you saw on that previous model run. But this is what the European has. It moves across the central Gulf of Mexico, and then once you get into the day on Saturday, this is Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central Time, and you see it still sitting there across the western Gulf of Mexico and starting to weaken. As for the rest of the forecast, again, like we were talking about, let me move back to the southeast. There was talk, and the models are showing it, that it would move into parts of Louisiana and Mississippi and even into Alabama, bringing some beneficial rainfall. There's still going to be some rainfall associated with that cold front. This is that cold front moving through on Saturday. So there's still going to be some rain and storms around, but you're probably not going to be looking at that widespread rainfall that a tropical system would bring on shore like we were kind of thinking of earlier on in the week. Matter of fact, here is the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall outlook, and this has been trimmed back tremendously. This is 6 a.m. on Sunday Central Time, and notice this is that area of rain and storms over the weekend, and that will track east. But once you get into Monday evening, that's your rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center. You're going to have this big blow-up of rain and storms with some flooding potential here across parts of Georgia. That's what's been going on today, so that's why you see that blob over there. But all of this is coming this weekend, and I mean, there's still a decent amount of rain, 1 to 2 inches here across parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley and up into parts of the Tennessee Valley. But again, this is a lot less here across parts of central Mississippi, central Alabama. So there's going to be rain. There's going to be scattered rain across parts of the South, but it's not going to be as widespread and kind of more drought busting than what we thought it would be earlier on in the week. So again, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. That's the latest on Hurricane Rafael. Again, we're going to be tracking it over the next several days, but as for any direct U.S. impact, that threat has really gone down, and that's unfortunate because, like I said, it would bring some beneficial rainfall to parts of the southern U.S. There's still going to be rain, but it's going to be with that frontal system moving in over the weekend. So my thoughts on Rafael right now, again, it's just north of Cuba. It's still impacting northern Cuba. There's hurricane warnings going on, tropical storm warnings for the Key West area. They're getting some impacts right now with some gusty winds and some of those outer rain bands. But it's just going to sit across the Gulf of Mexico. It's not going to be doing much. It's just going to kind of be a fish storm for the remainder of its future, most likely. There's, again, that chance it moves into Mexico. I don't really quite buy it right now, just based on how the upper level pattern looks like it's going to work out. But that's just something we'll keep an eye on. I think if there is a Mexico impact, it's going to be rather weak. But again, that's just something we're watching right now. But really, there's no threat to the U.S. Even if it does manage to kind of kick to the northeast and survive and hit the southern Gulf or the northern Gulf Coast, it's going to be weak. It's going to most likely be a tropical depression and really nothing to worry about. Again, the big thing we were watching with this was it could have brought beneficial rainfall to the south. And unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to pan out according to the forecast guidance right now. We'll still keep an eye on it, but that's what we got for you guys this evening. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday evening. Stay safe out there. We'll stay on top of Rafael and give you the latest updates as they come in.